March 2025. Demi Moore is seconds away from the perfect Hollywood comeback. Then the Oscar goes to someone else.
And the Oscar goes to Mikey Madison.
And the cruelest part is this: the movie she lost for was about the exact machine that had spent decades measuring women like her. This is why that loss carried 45 years of weight before Hollywood ever measured Demi Moore by her face, her body, or her age. She'd already learned what it meant to live under pressure. She was born in Roswell, New Mexico in 1962. Her family moved constantly, more than 40 times before she turned 18. More than 40 moves doesn't just mean different houses. It means different schools, different rooms, different versions of normal. It means learning early not to get too comfortable anywhere, because comfortable never lasted long. Money was tight. Her stepfather struggled with addiction. By 15, she'd already left home and was surviving on her own in a city that doesn't go easy on teenage girls with no safety net. She started modeling as a teenager. It paid the bills. It also gave her a foothold in an industry that would define the rest of her life. Modeling gave her a way in, but it also introduced the trap. Before anyone asked what she could do, they'd already decided what she was worth looking at. That order never really reversed. Acting followed almost by accident. A small soap opera role, then a few Brat Pack movies alongside a wave of young actors trying to break out at the same time.
Kevin, I'm curious. You know all those nights we stayed up talking?
Male actors from that same generation got to be rough around the edges. Unfinished, still figuring it out in public. Moore didn't get that grace period. She got treated like a surface before anyone treated her like a performer. Then, in 1990, Ghost made her one of the biggest stars alive, a box office phenomenon that turned her into a household name overnight. 2 years later, A Few Good Men put her next to Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. She held her own against two of the biggest names in the business.
I'm sexually aroused, Commander.
I don't think your client's murdered anyone.
By then, magazines had already crowned her one of the most beautiful women in the world over and over again. Being called beautiful helped make her famous, but it also became a warning label. From here on, every choice she made would get filtered through her face, her body, her age, not her work, not her range as an actor. Just those three things, endlessly, for decades. The beauty label opened the door. Then, it became the lock. The first place Hollywood tried to control Demi Moore was her body. In 1991, at the height of her rise, Demi Moore posed nude and pregnant for the cover of Vanity Fair. Some stores refused to display it. Talk shows debated whether it was obscene. All she'd done was show a body that was, quite literally, growing a baby. No weapon, no crime, just a pregnant woman standing still for a camera. Here's the thing worth sitting with. The scandal wasn't the nudity. Hollywood had used women's bodies to sell tickets for decades, in posters, in trailers, in magazine spreads nobody blinked at. The scandal was authorship. This time, she wasn't being framed by someone else's fantasy. She was choosing the frame herself. Why was a pregnant body treated like a public threat? 2 years later came Indecent Proposal, where her character's husband is offered $1 million for one night with her.
I were to offer you $1 million for one night with your wife.
The film became a national conversation. Suddenly, strangers everywhere had an opinion. What was her body worth in cash? The movie was fiction, but the debate treated her like public property. Hollywood had spent a decade profiting from how she looked. The moment she owned that, on her own terms, it got a different name. Vanity, indecency, too much. Think about the double standard hiding in plain sight. Photographers, magazines, and studios had built entire careers off her image without anyone questioning the morality of it. The instant she decided how her own body would be seen, the entire conversation shifted from admiration to alarm. First, they argued over her body. Then they argued over her price. Then came the number that changed her career, not because it was too high, because it belonged to a woman. By 1996, Moore was at her commercial peak. For a film called Striptease, she asked for $12.5 million. No actress had ever been paid that much. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly $25 million today. Male stars were already earning that kind of money. Tom Cruise. Harrison Ford. Nobody blinked. Nobody wrote think pieces about their character. A man's salary was proof of power. A woman's salary became proof of arrogance. The press turned her paycheck into a scandal overnight. They gave her a nickname that followed her for decades: Demi Moore. The nickname did something clever and cruel. It turned a labor issue into a personality flaw. She wasn't negotiating. She was greedy. She wasn't demanding market value. She was asking for too much, as if there were a ceiling that only applied to her. And here's the part that makes the outrage look even stranger. She still wasn't the highest paid actor in her own house. She was earning less than her own husband at the time, Bruce Willis. She wasn't even the top earner under her own roof. Just the highest paid woman in an industry full of higher paid men, and somehow she was the one who got dragged through the press for it. Moore didn't end the pay gap overnight. Other actresses would later command huge salaries of their own, with far less public ridicule attached to the number. But she absorbed a very specific kind of ridicule first. The idea that a woman asking for male star money was somehow greedy, somehow out of line, somehow forgetting her place. Too beautiful to be serious, too sexual to be respected, too expensive to be forgiven. Every one of those labels did the same job. They made the problem sound like her personality instead of the industry's math. Nobody had to explain why a man's salary made sense. Only hers required a defense. And then she tried the one thing critics claimed they wanted. In Striptease, they said she'd betrayed women. In G.I. Jane, they said she'd betrayed men. Same actress. Opposite choices. Same punishment. She shaved her head on camera for G.I. Jane.
I didn't wanna tell you.
She trained for months as a Navy SEAL candidate, real push-ups, real pull-ups, real endurance drills, earning every second of that transformation instead of faking it for the camera. Moore later summed up the whirlwind better than anyone else could. With Striptease, it was as if I had betrayed women, and with G.I. Jane, it was as if I had betrayed men. She changed the costume. She changed the body. She changed the entire image. The criticism only changed shape. Can you name one male action star ever accused of betraying his own gender for building muscle on camera? Once the press learned it could turn her body into a headline, it stopped needing a movie to do it. When she and Willis divorced in 2000, the coverage often circled back to her ambition, her image, her choices, as if a marriage ending were something a woman does to a man, not something that happens between two people. Older male stars had dated younger women for generations. They got called powerful, desired, legendary even, for still being able to attract someone half their age. Moore did the reverse once, dating actor Ashton Kutcher, 15 years younger, and she became a category. The tabloids helped turn one word into her label: cougar. A woman in her 40s, in a happy relationship, reduced to a hunting metaphor rarely, if ever, applied to men in the same position. This wasn't a dramatic exit. There was no final speech, no slammed door. It was quieter than that. The roles got smaller, the headlines got colder, the industry moved on, and slowly, a woman who'd once been everywhere became easier to ignore. She stepped back almost entirely. She moved to Idaho. She raised her 3 daughters away from the noise. Disappearing from Hollywood does not always look like failure. Sometimes it looks like survival. Sometimes it looks like choosing your children over another headline. Sometimes it looks like stepping away before the machine gets to decide what's left of you. There's no dramatic footage of that decade. No red carpet moment marking the choice. Just a woman who used to be discussed in every magazine in the country, quietly building a life where nobody was measuring her at all. When she did return to the industry through the 2000s and 2010s, the leading roles didn't come back with her. A supporting part here, a voice role there, a guest spot on a television drama. Male peers from her own generation kept headlining films well into their 60s. Action heroes included, no questions asked. Moore, a woman who'd once opened movies on her name alone, spent nearly 2 decades in the background of an industry she used to define. Years later, she wrote about that stretch in her memoir.
It's like
how have I had the life that I've had? And then I hit a very hard time in my personal life. And
For the first time, she described the private cost underneath the public story, the body image pressure, the marriages, the damage to her own sense of worth. The book became a bestseller. It also meant reliving, in public, chapters she'd already been punished for once. For years, it looked like Hollywood had finished writing Demi Moore's story, but it hadn't. It was only waiting for the one role that could turn every insult back on the industry itself. The substance was powerful for one simple reason. It didn't ignore Demi Moore's history. It weaponized it. In 2024, she got a script that felt impossible to turn down. The story, an aging actress, fired from her own show for being too old, injects herself with a drug that grows a younger, better version of her body.
One single injection unlocks your DNA and will release another version of yourself.
Grotesque, satirical, and almost too precisely. Her entire career turned into a horror film. Elizabeth Sparkle isn't discarded because she lacks talent. She's discarded because she no longer matches the version of womanhood the industry wants to sell. For another actress, that would be a bold role. For Demi Moore, it felt almost autobiographical. The role demanded extreme physical and emotional commitment. She was 61, and she was working in an industry that had spent decades treating aging as unforgivable. Director Coralie Farget pushed her through practical prosthetics and body horror effects that most roles never ask an actress to endure. Moore accepted it fully. That's what made the performance feel dangerous. Moore wasn't just playing fear, she was playing recognition. Every close-up carried history. Every moment of shame in the film seemed to echo a real headline, a real joke, or a real judgment once made at her expense. The film premiered at Cannes to a standing ovation so long that people in the theater were reportedly in tears. Then came the Golden Globes. Not just another award show, not for her. After more than 4 decades in the business, Demi Moore won her first Golden Globe.
I've been doing this a long time, like over 45 years, and this is the first time I've ever won anything.
She told the room about a producer who'd once called her a popcorn actress. She said she'd believed him for 30 years, and that belief had, in her own word, corroded her.
30 years ago, I had a producer tell me that I was a popcorn actress.
Then she said this, "You will never be enough, but you can know the value of your worth if you just put down the measuring stick."
You will never be enough, but you can know the value of your worth if you just put down the measuring stick.
That one line reframes everything you've just heard. The pay backlash, the body shaming, the tabloid cruelty. None of it was ever really about her. It was the measuring stick. The measuring stick had changed names for 30 years. First beauty, then body, then salary, then sexuality, then age, then seriousness. But it was always the same measuring stick. She won the Screen Actors Guild Award next, the room rising for her before she'd said a single word. Then, the Critics' Choice Award followed, another statue for a shelf that had stayed empty for far too long. And it wasn't only a story about trophies. The substance itself became a cultural conversation. Critics and columnists spent months debating what it was really saying about aging, about beauty standards, about how quickly Hollywood discards women once it decides they're no longer useful. For once, her body wasn't the scandal. The scandal was why everyone had been staring at it for 30 years. Think about the strange symmetry of it. The same body that got shamed on a magazine cover in 1991 was now being celebrated on the world's biggest stages for exposing exactly why that shame had existed in the first place. The industry that once punished her for owning her image was now handing her its highest honors for turning that ownership into art. It took 30 years of backlash and one horror movie about a woman being replaced by a younger version of herself for Hollywood to finally say the quiet part out loud. For once, Hollywood wasn't asking if Demi Moore was too much. It was asking why it had needed her to be less. The Oscar would have made the ending cleaner, but the comeback was already real. The camera, the pause, the name, the smile. Moore was the favorite. The film was the substance. Then they read a different name, Mikey Madison, for Honora. The clip of her reaction went viral within the hour, viewers picking apart every micro-expression on her face. The loss hurt because it echoed the whole story. Applauded, celebrated, still held just short of the final room. It's hard not to notice her entire career compressed into that single moment, one more time, right at the end. Director Coralie Fargett chose her for a reason.
It's like, how have I had the life that I've had? And then I hit a very hard time in my personal life. And
Fargett wanted someone the audience already had a relationship with, someone whose real history with judgment would bleed into the role without a single extra line of dialogue. Hollywood didn't just give Demi Moore a great part, it handed her the one part only she could have played, built entirely out of what had been done to her. So when did Demi Moore challenge Hollywood's double standards? Not in one speech, not in one role, not in one awards season. She challenged them every time she refused the role Hollywood chose for her. Every time she picked up the camera on her own body, asked for her own number, shaved her head, or simply kept working past the age she was told she should disappear. The pay gap she first cracked open in 1996 hasn't closed. Actresses still often earn less than their male co-stars for equal billing. But the specific shame she carried, the idea that a woman asking for equal money was somehow indecent, genuinely faded, largely because she absorbed that damage first, so the actresses who came after her wouldn't have to. A generation of younger actresses now points to her as proof that a career doesn't have an expiration date. That message hits harder coming from her than from almost anyone else in the industry, because she lived through the exact opposite belief for decades. She isn't the only actress the industry has punished for aging, for asking to be paid fairly, or for looking a certain way at the wrong moment. But she's one of the few who lived long enough in the spotlight to watch the argument turn in her favor. In 2025, she was named to the Hollywood Walk of Fame's class of 2026. She's working steadily again across film and television, busier than she's been in decades. She didn't get every trophy. She got something Hollywood had withheld from her for decades: the right to be taken seriously without apologizing for having survived. Maybe that's the more honest ending anyway. Not a clean trophy moment, but a messier, truer one. An industry finally catching up to a woman who'd been standing in the same place the whole time, waiting for the math to add up. Demi Moore's story isn't the only one. Hollywood has a pattern. It turns women into fantasies, then into punchlines. Then, years later, it calls their survival a comeback. She spent almost her entire career being told she was too much or not enough. Then, she came back in a movie about exactly that cruelty, and made the measuring stick the villain instead of her. That's the part worth remembering the next time you watch an actress get torn apart for something a man would never even be questioned about. If you want to see this same pattern playing out in real time instead of decades later, go watch our video on Pamela Anderson next. Subscribe if you want more stories about the people Hollywood underestimated. We post one every week,